All right, everybody, we're on to an amazing episode today. I'm super excited to have Jessica Burgio on. Did I pronounce the last name correct?
You sure did.
Burgio. And what's cool is we're both San Diegans. You know, down here in Southern California, America's finest city. But before we jumped on here, we were chatting a little bit about, your background and how you came to kind of where you are today. And we'll just start right in. You're the hype girl.
That's what I love that title so much because there's so much that can go with being the hype girl. But I feel like I wouldn't say just women, but especially women will connect with that because, we are brought up to be like the support role. And it starts with, when you're a kid, right? Hyping your friends. You can do it. Come on, jump off that slide, all the way into motherhood where you're like, encouraging your children, a lot of times, your partner into different things. And I found myself in that role early on in life, being a big sister and, kind of having this weird, overly confident attitude that I was always the one encouraging my friends with the sports, with the whatever you want to call it. And then again, into the beauty industry, there was just this, hype space around encouraging people to try new looks for their hair or hyping myself up enough to do scary things like learn how to cut hair. Right? So learn how to podcast. So yeah, I hold that title very near and dear.
So what do you think made you make that leap from, you were cutting hair for how many years?
22 years.
22 years behind the chair. And you were chatting briefly about how you were, this person holding space for folks, which you get to hear all kinds of fun stories when folks come in to get their hair and stuff done. What any shocking ones, and then we'll jump into the other stuff.
Well, if you've ever told a story to your hairdresser, you would rather I don't share that here on this podcast with everybody. That's one of those things where that's part of holding
don't
space.
Don't have to name names.
Yeah, no, I know. Oh, I've heard some gnarly stories. I think that's for an X-rated show because that's the first thing that comes top of mind. But I've been a part of people's discoveries of infidelity, of pregnancies, of loss of pregnancies, shit gone wrong, shit gone right. I've been there before people have gotten married, before they've had children. I mean, 22 years is a long time to be a part of people's lives. And I was really lucky enough to have clients from my early 20s all the way until when I retired. And, I saw them through a lot of shit. It's crazy. It's wild to think. I mean, it's gone by so fast, yet so slow. If you've ever been a parent, you know what that phrase means. So a lot of space being held in the sense of, you never know the state that client's going to walk into your chair needing. So if all of a sudden Susie, who has long hair, wants to cut bangs, I have to ask, what's going on? And often I have to ask a couple of different questions in order to realize she wants bangs because it's the only thing she feels in control of her life right now. And then we need to have a whole ass conversation around that's not the answer to solving your world's problems. It's such a interesting space I found myself in because I didn't go to life coaching school. I didn't become a therapist, before I stepped into that space. I became all of those things as the time went on and I got to
almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I used to say we are hairdressers by trade, but we're really therapists, inadvertently by default.
Well, no, it's because when I was doing residential sales along the coast in San Diego, the joke amongst realtors in general is you're not just a realtor doing the transactional stuff. You're actually a dog walker, house cleaner, personal therapist, whatever else you want to name yourself, you get to do when you're obviously selling homes. And then, branched off into the realtor investor world and doing from flips to multifamily apartments and then, on and on and on. But that's incredible. That's so you've heard some amazing stories and hearing all of that. So what made you really want to jump into the podcast world to what you're doing now where you're helping folks express their brand, grow their personal self, monetize, I guess, online if they wanted to do that as well? What made that leap so exciting for you?
Well, I feel like, I had a conversation with my mom, right, as we all do sometimes, of making sure we're making the right decisions. Usually if she disagrees, I know it's the right decision. So with that, it came to a point in my career where I felt like for me, it wasn't enough. Like I'd reached a state in my career where The numbers felt good for what I was, showing up for. And I realized quickly, like, okay, if nothing changes in the next 5 years, this is exactly how it's going to go. Am I okay with that? Is this the place I want to be? And I had fallen into personal development by way of a girl who I used to host fitness camps with, who's gone on to become a massive podcaster with over 50 million downloads on her show. Her husband too is noteworthy of that. They've written books. They've had all this success when they moved from one arena that they were an expert in into the online space. So she was in personal training, he was in finance, and then she got a itch for what is this personal development world? People like Gabby Bernstein, people like Jack Canfield started hosting these masterminds, and she just knew she wanted to learn more. And that's the question, right? Are you satisfied with where you're at, or are you curious about other things? And if you have that itch, then that feeling that even when things are quote unquote good or better than maybe everyone else around you, and you start to feel weird because you want different or you're curious about what else is out there, this is who this will resonate with. And I'm sure pretty much everyone who listens to this podcast or podcasts in general is curious for that extra bit of what don't I know? I want to know what I don't know, right? And we all know there's plenty of shit we don't know. And that's why you listen and you learn and you are eager to learn and listen. And so watching them step into this new world of online space and podcasting themselves, and I was like, wow, like what is she doing this for? Is it to be famous? Is it to be an influencer? Like, what does this look like? And it was really just about her discovering where she fit in with the life that she had already had, like, right, her personal experiences. How could she help people? How could sharing her day-to-day struggles and stories be relatable to create connection, to create community based off of like her own actual in real time personal struggles or personal experiences? And I was like, oh, wait, so she doesn't have to have this quote unquote life figured out in order to then help people. She can just get on in real time and share like what's coming up, and that might help somebody. I was like, wow, I feel like so much permission was given to me to just get on and talk about my career and what motherhood has looked like for me, what divorce has looked like for me, what single mom life has looked like, what the struggle for wanting more out of your life has looked like. And I'm like, that would look like a platform bigger than standing behind the chair talking to one person who's not really even asking me for that. And so I kind of did things backwards when I got into the online space. So those same mentors of mine started a business mastermind called Fast Foundations about 5 years ago. And it was then where I was looking at my life thinking, everything's pretty great, but it's not amazing. I don't have the quote unquote level of success that would allow me to have, I don't know, fuck you money to do whatever I want with,
so
money to invest in other people's companies whenever I want.
Yeah. To touch on that real quick, because everybody has their different definitions of success, right? Some people it's a professional level of success. Some people it's personal in certain levels of where they want to get with family, friends, travel, those experiences. Maybe it's spiritual and health, wellness. So in your opinion, what is success in your mind? Like, when will you have, and they always say the process is where it's at, because once you achieve it, it's like, but is there something financially you're looking for specifically, or is it more personal?
Oh, it's definitely more personal. It's always personal. I mean, and I think you knew that asking that question. And even if someone's answer is financial, it's still a personal reason why they want to make that amount of money, or they think that amount of money is going to give them the street cred, the viability, the whatever, in order to have this life they think they want, that's then in turn going to make them happy. And so we won't know until we get there what that will really look like, because as we progress and grow and as we start to make more and have different experiences and quote unquote wins or successes, you're always going to be moving the bar further and further away. Because once you can hit one goal, you now know that confidence, that proof. Well, why can't I go to 10 million? Why can't I go to 20 million? Well, if I'm making 20 million, why can't I be a billionaire? So I don't think there's an end goal for me. I just want to be in a position to give as much as I want, to be able to contribute if it needs it around me. I want to be able to never worry if someone in my family or an animal in my life needs a $10,000 surgery, things like that. To me, being able to never have to worry if it's something we can handle. That's where what drives me personally, because a lot of that happened when I was a child, that there weren't things we could do or we could be a part of or that we could take care of. And it related around money. So that's what drives me to not just get by.
Gotcha. Now, we both, we were talking about Jeff Fenster before we came on. How do you know him, by the way? Yeah, very cool. I'd recently had a chance to interview him, and then found out we'd actually had even closer relationships than that. What is your relationship with him? And I know that he talks about relationship bank accounts, and I'm actually reading his book right now, which is incredible. So it compounds big time now that I fully understand it. What do you think of that? Like the relationship bank account side of it?
Well, he calls it relationship bank account. I call it, your relationship capital, if you will, or
Yep.
and him and I got into that conversation when I was on his show about the proximity he had to various people growing up, thanks to his parents, and the way he was able to parlay knowing those people and having them as mentors in his life into the success he had early on and the career that he's been able to build, right? The success level. It's amazing. And I met Jeff through another podcast guest that I had on my show that our agency vetted for me based off of outside people to help grow my show, which is something we do inside our agency as well. And Ken Jocelyn, who is an amazing connector and speaker, I got done interviewing him for the show, and he said, "So where are you?" I said, "San Diego." He goes, "All right, you need to meet this person, this person, this person, and this person." And he took an extra 5 minutes out of his day, and he reached out to each one of those people individually and started a conversation with them for me in the DMs, basically vetting me as someone they needed to connect with. And Jeff took it from there and invited me to be on his show. So
Wow.
Talk about relationship capital. And when given the opportunity to build that relationship capital, how are you like parlaying that opportunity into something else, right? Then asking Jeff, would he like to be on my show? Jeff, who else can I help get you on your show? I mean, I'm sitting in a room signing a wall that Drew Brees just signed. So
Yeah.
It was a little bit, I looked around and thought, how the fuck did I get here? Well, I got here because I decided to start my damn podcast. And
Yeah.
if I hadn't started my own podcast, I would have never been able to have Ken on the show. I wouldn't be on your show right now. And I would have never got to meet Jeff, who actually lives in San Diego as well, and gave me this future goal of having a few stores of my own for Everbowl,
Yeah, no, and it's funny because I came across you because you had commented on our posts that from when we were doing the show together in his new studio, which is an amazing studio, by the way.
That fucked me. That blew my mind. I walked to the studio and I'm like, and now my vision is bigger. I hate you.
Yeah. No, and when I was sitting there, because I was actually just up there recently, I said, so I'm going to guess. Just give me a range, but I'm going to say 200,000 or so. He's like, pretty close. Not too bad.
Pretty close. Yeah.
Pretty legit. And I was just over in Vegas, obviously meeting with Ryan Panetta and a few other folks over there, more in the real estate space and some big names. And so, seeing his studio and what he's doing and on and on and on, it's amazing how they're using content and helping people to grow, which was really how even the Abundance to Give podcast came about, because there's a million podcasts, of course. And I never wanted to do a podcast just to have a podcast and talk even to you and say, hey, how did you become super successful, Jessica, and tell me about the tips and tricks and all that. That's great. But really what we wanted to touch on, which came by way of Mr. Beast. Are you familiar with Mr. Beast? Uh-oh, your audio went. Hold on one second. There we go. Try that again.
It was me.
Okay. Now you're not muted.
That's how that works. I said, of course I know Mr. Beast. I have an 11-year-old, so I'm very familiar with anything on YouTube. Yeah, for sure.
So, and my kids as well, and they watch him. And I'm sitting there one morning as they were watching Mr. Beast on the tube, going, who is this guy, first of all? So then I started doing research because I want to make sure my kids are not watching weird crap. And I went into his history and how he had, there's a point he had like 1,200 followers. And I'm watching his first video he ever did. I'm going like way back in the chain, right? And he's just playing video games and people are watching him play video games. And I'm like, oh, this is boring. And then he didn't really get anywhere with that for a while. A lot of people were doing that. So he decided one day, he said, fuck it. We're going to go into stores like Best Buy, and we're going to put big circles of tape on the floor. We're going to cover them with a blanket or a towel. And then we're just going to just grab somebody randomly in the store and bring them over, pull open the towel, and say, anything you can fit inside this circle in the next 5 minutes, you get. Right? And that's literally how it started. He started giving away a bunch of free shit. And then watching people lose their minds all over the place, especially when moms are in the stores and they're grabbing stuff, trying to stack it like Tetris inside these circles. And they're crying because like they're getting their kids things that they wanted. And of course, these are thousands of dollars and stuff. And that's how it started, because of the emotion and the connection and the giving that came about for him. It created abundance for him. Hence what we wanted to do here, and that is abundance to give, which is how giving and helping others, right, has created this abundance effect back to you in your life. So is there anything in your life where giving and helping others, whether it's through charity, your time, or your money, which is kind of what Jeff Fenster was saying, sometimes he has more money than time right now, but either one of those, has that helped create opportunities and abundance for you in your life?
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. I have a couple stories, and the biggest one that comes to top of mind is my ability to get to work with and for Strong Fitness Magazine. Several years ago, we created a Strong Girls program at the local YMCA in San Diego, in some of the, less opportunist area. And we had these Friday night meetups where these girls could come and just have a safe space to hang out and talk about their personal life. And it was my girlfriend and I started it with one of the board members there. And I grew up going to the YMCA. I grew up going to the Boys and Girls Club because my mom had to work all the time. So I had a deep connection to the YMCA, what it stands for, and what its mission is. And so an opportunity for me to create by giving my time, because back then I didn't really have the resources or money to really give, but I had my time to give mentorship, and leaning in on that and showing those girls what it's like to be strong, to work on their body, their mental health, their fitness, what they're eating, who they're hanging out with, the energy that they allow into their space for what they can control as a teenager. It really helped me understand that we still need that mentorship even as we grow as women and men, as adults. We still need to be encouraged. We still need to be inspired and motivated. And while success looks great on paper or on Instagram, who are you really inside, and who are you? What do you stand for? And so that's the main motivation behind why I do the podcast. It's not a, hey, look at me, I got it all figured out. It's a full blown come with me as we both figure this out, because I'm going to continuously navigate shit in my life that if I don't share it with you, if I don't document it in real time and I just like make a post about it or I blog about it later once I quote unquote have it all figured out, is that as helpful as if I share real raw emotions in real time of what I'm going through? Maybe you've already gone through it and you're listening to my show and you can help me. I feel like the more we show up and just be vulnerable and honest. And again, I always like to remind people, vulnerability doesn't look like you sharing anything that you're not truly comfortable sharing. You don't have to go all the way there in order to create impact or to ask for help. And I started my podcast.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Sorry
to stop you. Yeah, sorry to stop you on that, but you just hit on a topic where, because I think some people's biggest fear in being vulnerable or being authentic, sometimes not even authentic but vulnerable, is, am I going to share too much? Is it going to expose me too much? What do you have to say about that?
I have to say again, I'm not in anybody else's head but my own. And I know that by sharing what's really going on with us, we're able to realize we're less alone. And I learned standing behind the chair, holding space for other people when they would open up and share and be vulnerable about why they want to cut their bangs today, right? We'll just use that as a silly example. That them being vulnerable and opening up and sharing with me was them looking for some sense of understanding, permission, just someone to, understand maybe what they were even going through. They didn't need me to do anything. They didn't need me to fix it. They did when you
was it validation?
Validation? Yeah, maybe.
Feel validated.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I think podcasting holds that space for so many people to tune in and realize oh, wow, I thought my life was terrible and sucked and I was the only person dealing with this thing. And then I come to find out that Jessica and Justin, oh my God, they deal with it too. They seem so successful. They seem so happy. They have kids. They have their life together. Like, but they also struggle with that. And anybody in any social media class I've ever taught over the years, um, I would always get someone raising their hand in the back saying, I don't want to do social media. I don't want to share. I'm a private person. I. And I say, start with sharing the things you love to talk about. What would you share your coffees that you love? That's how Instagram started. This is the sandwich I just got. It's so good. This is why
I know,
influencer
right?
marketing blew up.
Let's say food porn.
Yeah, those influencers that started to grow early on, they weren't sharing their deep, dark secrets. They were sharing things that they loved, and then they built a connection. They built a community. They built an audience who knew, like, and trusted them for the things that they were sharing. And then as they got more comfortable online, they would start to share more private things, maybe around a miscarriage or maybe around a divorce. And then people started to get in with them deeper. And that's when you create really true, depthful relationships with people you may never otherwise get to meet in real life. That's why social media is so powerful.
It's just,
that's why podcasting is so powerful. It's wild.
Yeah, I think it's I guess personality wise, it's sometimes more challenging. Maybe it's just for men to truly No? Okay.
Not at all.
You're proving me wrong today. I like it.
These are always women that argue with me about being vulnerable. And I this one girl specifically, she has stayed connected to me since this class we did a couple years ago. And she tags me in all the posts that she shares now because she wants me to see that she's showing up, that she's now getting more comfortable sharing things. And it's great. We have these little side conversations and it's wonderful. And she shows her face online now and and it's just all part of personal development and growth.
The journey.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Here's a question for you. What's your son's name?
Kai.
So if I sat Kai, actually, if Kai were on this podcast and we had a little 3-screen thing going here, right? And I asked him to maybe talk about some pros and cons of mama, what would they be?
Oh my God, I love this question. I'm totally going to steal this. Thank you for that. Kai would say, my mom works too much. Yeah. Kai would say, but I understand what she's doing because my mom tries to help people by talking a lot. My mom loves to ask questions.
My mom likes to help people by talking a lot. I like that.
Yes, because, and my mom likes to make people feel beautiful. That's why she goes to the salon and does their hair. I mean, I'd like to think he'd be that articulate. He'd probably just say, I don't know. He's so in his own world now as almost a preteen that I'm just along for the ride. But I've done my best because I do really, look back at my childhood and wish my mom had explained life to me more and given me more opportunity to understand what was going on in real time. Let's not wait till they're 25 to explain why you did that thing at 10 years old or why you didn't let them do XYZ when that's what everybody else was doing. I share with him in real time. And I'll give an example. We lived down in Pacific Beach for a long time. There's a lot of bums down there. And we would drive by somebody panhandling and I'd say, that's why we don't do drugs. That's why we're never going to do drugs. That's why we go to school. That's why mommy makes you do your math homework. And whether that's right or wrong, if you want to judge my parenting, cool, I don't care. I have always tried to loop him in to life. And, I think when he gets older, the answers will be different, that my mom really cares about people. So she shows up and talks about her life as a way to help others.
Yeah. Are you worried about what's being taught in schools these days?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about what's not being taught.
We can be a little controversial without being maybe, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, because you have a middle schooler, I have kids that are in elementary. Parents want to have some say over just teach the topics, and you don't need to teach other stuff. If you know what I mean.
Well, I find it to be interesting because you're asking maybe the right person, maybe the wrong person to have this conversation with, because my son's been in a private Catholic school since he was in kindergarten. Yeah. And so what's being taught and what's not being taught is very interesting. He's in that school because I believe that we for me personally, it's important that my son understand that there's a higher power and that he's never alone, no matter if his parents are around or not, no matter if his friends tell him there's nobody. Like, you have a connection to your faith and to God, and that person will always be there in your deepest, darkest hours, the person you celebrate with, the person you pray with, the things you can talk about with God that you can't share with anybody else, maybe your hairdresser. Like,
I love it.
that's why he's in that
Yeah.
school, because it's a controlled,
Mm.
safe environment as to what is actually going on. And the base of what they teach isn't so much Catholicism, it's doing the right thing,
Yeah. The
love and
moral stuff.
kindness. Like, each
Important.
month it's a different theme of self-awareness disguised as personal growth. And I'm so here for that. But what's interesting is his dad and I had a conversation a few months ago where we also realize, as he's going into 6th grade middle school, that life isn't always bubble wrapped. And
Right.
so, do we want to expose him at this prime age to quote unquote real life and what's really going on in, say, public schools? So we vetted a school that's in our neighborhood and talked with other parents who are choosing to send their kids to that school. And we made a decision, we're going to move him into a public school, 6th grade, that has more academic options. He also struggles with ADHD, so they have more support that they can give him. So various reasons, but the things that are, you'd laugh if I shared how they talked about family planning with the 5th graders this year. I mean, could we avoid the real conversation more? I'm like, the kid has YouTube, okay? The kid
Right.
has access to the internet, and God knows what him and his friends are talking about when they're playing Fortnite. He's not an idiot,
Yeah.
So when
No, and my kids do the same thing. But you touched on something that I think is starting to become more near and dear to my heart. And that is kind of the faith and the God side of things. Because I grew up in a
good.
Christianity. Mom drug us to church. Me, my brother, sister, everybody. And so we'd kick and scream the whole way, right? But we went and we did Sunday school
Yeah.
and blah, blah, blah. I ended up going to Pepperdine University, which is technically a Christian school, but there's more Catholics there than Christians.
Oh, I'm sure your
yeah.
mother was so happy.
Well, but I had never even planned on it, right? That's the way it went. I've never been a hugely religious person, but highly spiritual, right? Where I believe in a higher power, I believe in God. It's just depending on other specifics. I've always felt that religions were a bit too confining. It's not that they weren't amazing and serve their purpose in our world, society, and helping people feel together. I've just always struggled with thinking they're way too confining, because I just think that we are a part of something so far beyond our comprehension as human beings that we can't even begin to fathom its complexity, right? So we've created religions, humans, to help us maybe understand things that aren't understandable, to make us feel more connected than and not alone, and to be able to look at something and feel something that is more tangible when we can't actually touch it or feel it. And so we've created the religions, which is fine. I just always felt they were too confining. So that's why I've never really dove in straight into either Christianity, Catholicism, whatever it may be, because I think they're all right and they're all wrong at the same time.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think the reason why the religions were created in the way that they were is because if you have a bunch of people running around with no rules or regulations, structures or processes, you can't run a business like that, right? Everyone can't have their own culture inside of your business. It doesn't work like that. And so over time, societies have put together ideas of like, hey, if we all do this, then here we go, right? Like getting behind an idea. And I think probably, if I had to guess, from your childhood, you had that exposure. So it's rooted in who you are. I'm sure there's moments that you talk to God, or you think things, or you have your
Sure.
own relationship, that because you were exposed to it early on, you may not need the traditional every Sunday or whatever to keep that going in your heart and to expand on that as far as your spiritual practice. Like Kai will show and tell you, like, mommy does breath work, mommy has crystals, mommy reads tarot cards now, mommy writes in her journal, mommy goes on these weird like retreats with people where they dance and they sing, like we do all kinds of weird shit now. And I've opened myself
You're
up
like, I do ayahuasca, right?
I haven't done that yet. My mom wants to do that though.
Okay.
She thinks it'll solve all her problems. And I am so open to anything that makes us feel a deeper connection to ourselves and to something else, to give us purpose when sometimes we feel purposeless, to give us guidance when we're at our darkest time and we have nothing. Like that is, to me, what religion and spirituality is really there for, because it's just something that we're not meant to do this life alone. We're not meant to strong arm
Right.
it and have it all figured out.
Yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I've seen the power of prayer amongst people of completely different religions, faiths, backgrounds, even
Yep.
atheists. I mean, it's
Yep.
crazy, but the power of prayer is absolutely there. So that's why when you do hear people say, "Well, I don't know if there's anything," or I don't believe there's anything, and I say, "Let's to each their own. You're completely entitled to that feeling." But let me ask you this question. I said, when you go to bed at night, there's a moment of conscious and unconsciousness, and there's like you're awake, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're asleep, and then 6 hours go by, and you wake up, and it's daytime, right? But there's that moment between the unconscious and subconscious where you know that you're there. Imagine going and having it go black like that, and then you never waking up. I said, you can't really imagine that. It's hard to really grasp that. I said, so to think that the nothing happens, something happens. I mean, I can guarantee you something happens when we pass on. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it doesn't just end. So if you want to use that as your trigger for God or higher power or other beings or whatever it is, so be it. But something happens. And so that's why it's always a challenge when people, they're like, no, it just goes black. I'm like, think about that for a minute. Best of luck on that one. Because there's just no way. Like something has to happen. It doesn't just go black.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Listen, every thought we think is a choice. Every feeling that we feel, we're choosing to feel that way. When people say, you made me feel like that, listen, if you want to choose to think that it all goes black, stay rooted in that thought. If you choose to think that you can never make more money in your business, okay. If you choose to think that what you got handed as a kid in life is all you're ever going to get, stick to that. Like we can all define where we're at now by choices that we have made. And so that is one of the pillars and lenses of which I speak to my different personas on my podcast through is the power of choice. And each and every morning we have a choice to play full out in our life or to choose not to. So again, that's all part of, I don't have conversations anymore or spend any time where I have to try to convince somebody, talk somebody into. I'll hold space. You want to tell me how you think there's a black hole when we die? Okay. Yeah. You'll get me nodding. I'll listen. I'm a great listener. That's why I'm a great podcaster. But I'm not going to argue your thought. I'm just going to listen and let you do you.
Yeah. No, and that's a fair point. People always mention to me like, you seem so positive all the time. I said, well, yeah, but that's because it's a choice. I said, I have two choices when I wake up in the morning. Be a Debbie Downer, be negative Nancy, worry about all the problems in the world, and I could talk myself into a hole. Or I could say a couple things I'm grateful for, because you have to have gratitude and be in a place of gratitude every day. Because, if somebody wants to, I was reading I don't know who would mention this. I think it was Tony Robbins or it was Ed Milet, one of the two. They said, if you want to get out of negative thought spiral, right? Because it happens all the time where you start getting into negative thoughts. And sometimes you spiral into it and it's tough to get out. If you absolutely will just stop yourself, say 3 things that you're grateful for, it's almost nearly impossible at that point not to change the trajectory of thought and go from negative to like, okay, like even if it's, I get to see the sun today, or I have 2 great kids, or I have a roof over my head and it's not leaking every night when I go to bed. Just some basic gratitude will change your mentality every day and keep you out of a negative spiral. That was one big thing I picked up from both of them. So
I love that. Can I parlay off of that?
Yeah.
For anybody listening who has heard that. Okay, yeah. I know I need to be grateful in order to get my state changed, right? Okay, Tony Robbins, like it might be nice for you, must be nice for you to just find gratitude because you're a multi-billionaire and life really is that great for you. So if you're in a downward spiral, like you have no right to be. But what about me? What about the person who I have nothing? I am struggling. Like I really can find gratefulness that there's sunshine or that I have a pot to piss in. But I'm in a downward spiral. It's when you're in that pain point of life, that is now your choice to make. Am I going to continue to choose to live a life like this? Or am I going to find something to be grateful for that will drive me to want more to be grateful for? Because sometimes we can grateful ourselves right into staying miserable and eating the same shit sandwich we've been eating because it's what we know. It's what we know. It's the cards we've been quote unquote dealt. So if you are in a place where you're feeling despair or struggle or whatnot, use that pain and let it drive you to create more purpose in your life and to make different choices and to do something about it and to make some change. I doubt Tony or Ed would argue with me about that because they came from nothing and they did something about it, and they continue to do stuff about it even now when they don't freaking have to. They continue to show up for people who are in those places in their life to remind them that they have a fucking choice. You have a choice every single day. So I do too practice gratitude. And when I'm feeling miserable or frustrated or indecisive, I say, what do I know? Am I confident about something? What is happening right now?
Oh, I sent up the screen. I'm putting up your amazing
I was
Instagram.
like, oh God, did I push a button? Sorry, you scared me.
I don't want to mess your thought up, but I want to make sure people know where to find you.
Thank you. I feel like there was a time in my life where I tried to mantra, affirm, grateful myself into accepting the life I had created for myself because it was a really good setup. It was pretty simple. I had it figured out. I was making a couple $100,000 a year. Like life was good. It really was. And if I had stayed in that grateful, I'm so happy. Look at me. I did like this is good enough. I wouldn't be experiencing the joy and the opportunity that I have now because I made a decision to find things that were sticky enough. Those pain points we were talking about is why do you do the things you do? It's so that then I can invest more. I can help more people at a bigger level. I can contribute to the YMCA with a $50,000 check every quarter to help those girls on a deeper transformational level, right? Not just talk to them for an hour once a week. How can I change her life? Can I send her to college? Like that's the shit that the pain point of me not being able to do that in that current state made me keep showing up, made me take action. So don't mean to stand on a soapbox and preach, but
it's amazing.
That's where like the drive comes from. And I know anyone who listens to these types of shows has that in them too. Otherwise they wouldn't be listening to it.
Yeah, 100%. So to kind of finish up the podcast for today, what charity or organization other than is it the YMCA? Is that the main one right now?
Well, we have our own group of girls that we kind of sponsor every quarter. And so we're just looking to do bigger and bigger things for them to be able to create more opportunity for them, like college scholarships, or, I come from the beauty industry, so to be able to send these girls to beauty school or makeup school if that's what they want. We've got a really great board of women who kind of chair all of this and show up. So yeah, right now that's our main focus.
All right. So we at the Abundance to Give are going to be sending you $500.
Amazing.
Just for being here talking and actually getting us a little deep, Jessica. I felt like, we got into some fun little stuff at the end. You can tell that you're passionate about it, especially when it comes to, the self-development, personal growth, even the faith-based stuff, as that's part of your life as well. But I've seen more and more the power of that. And I think that it can be a very lonely existence if you're not allowing greater powers, whatever they may be for you, to come into your life.
Yeah.
Because it has impacted me a tremendous amount. And the more and more you just give into it, just allow it to happen. Don't keep fighting it.
Well, thank you for letting us have that portion of the conversation, because I do think it's important for people to hear it talked about in a less like regimented, regulated, you got to do it a certain way conversation. I think it opens people's up and it puts their defenses down to know like, oh wait, so there isn't one right way to do it. Like I can make it my own. Like that's a lot. That's a permission slip.
Yeah. Cause I don't go to church. I will, but I don't.
Same.
But I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. I believe that we do go somewhere and something happens. And, by that I live through the morals and core value systems and so forth. I just don't believe in order to be a spiritual human being that you have to sit there with a Bible in your hand every day. And that's totally fine for folks that choose that route. It's to each their own. And I think it's amazing. So
Can I share one more thing that came up for me while we were talking about passion and purpose and kind of spirituality? I think just to put a bow on this will be helpful for anybody listening because it was something that I dealt with, and maybe I'll do a podcast on it. You had asked me before we hit record around like, how did you get into the podcasting space? Like, how did you end up retiring? Like, how did we get here? And I will tell you, during that time when life was quote unquote okay, and I discovered this business mastermind to help people grow and scale their online business, which I didn't have at the time, I allowed myself to be open to exploring what future passions and purposes I could have. But in the interim, I thought that the next thing I found had to be the end all be all purpose of my life, the biggest passion I was ever going to experience. And what I realized through podcasting, which was just a one-off thing I started to share my thoughts, was that you can get really purposeful and passionate about something that you love for a short while, for a long time, as you see it start to create impact. So to anybody who's in that phase of life, maybe you're transitioning from one career to another, maybe you're thinking about doing something, maybe podcasting is what you want, maybe you're just here to be inspired. If you're chasing that feeling of purpose and passion, like you just mentioned about feeling grateful, what can you look at in your life right now that you feel a sense of purpose about every day? And passion, and get rooted in those purposes and passions and see what you can expand upon in those realms, or what excites you that you could get purposeful and passionate about. So I just want to leave people with that from me, because I feel like for a long time it held me back from making a decision about what I was going to go all in on, right? I had had success in the beauty industry because I went all in and I focused. But as I started to dabble in other things, I was just freaking dabbling. I wasn't committing, and it's one thing to get excited about something, it's a whole nother thing to be dedicated. So take that for what it is.
Touche. And because I think it's a football coach always told me, he said, you got to give 100. He says, giving me 110% is bullshit, right? It doesn't exist. You cannot give 110%. You can give 100, meaning I want you to give me 100% of your effort, 100% of the time that you're here on the practice field or on the field playing. Just give me 100% of your effort while you're here for the hour, 2 hours you're here, and then go off and jerk off all you want doing whatever it is you want to do. Give me 100. And that mentality is kind of what I've stuck with in my life, is how you do anything is how you do everything, right? Make your bed, make it freaking well, right? You want to feed your dog well. You go wash your car, wash the hell out of that car. How you do anything is how you do everything, because if you half-ass one thing, people's perception is going to be that you half-ass everything. So
that's a bow if I ever heard it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We'll leave it. Thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing. We're going to do more because you're in San Diego. I'm in San Diego. We probably need to do this live in studio. And I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more fun topics that could come out of it. So, and a lot more things. And we'll get Jeff Fenster involved because. Do you play tennis by chance?
Not well, but I sure do play. I give it my full ass when I play.
All right. Well, fair enough. Yeah, he plays tennis, so he wants to play tennis soon. I would love to.
Let's go, yeah. I need to get I'm a longtime cheerleader, so you guys know I'll be good for the cheering squad.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, and signing off. Take care.